everyone. Apologies for the delay. The chairperson will join the meeting shortly. He's experiencing network problems. Thank you very much.
I just want to check with the Secretariat if we have most of our members so that we can begin. Amanda, can you just confirm that?
Good morning, Chair. Yes, we can start the meeting. We have about 5 members on the platform, including yourself.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. Honorable members, let me take this opportunity to welcome you in this meeting and also welcome the Minister together with the officials of the department. As you know that some of our members have traveled on an international study tour to Germany. I hope then that that will not cause any problem for our meeting. I now wish to say that the meeting is duly opened, and I will ask the Secretariat
recording in progress
with the credentials. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. I have received
Yeah.
I have received apologies from Honorable Bibi, Honorable Nyambi, Honorable Nsube, Honorable Ngwenya, as well as Honorable Labuskaghni. Thank you, Chair.
Those are the only apologies you have.
Correct, Chair.
All right. Okay, no, thank you very much. Is that another register for apology?
Yes, I want to register Honorable Mukause, political commitment, apology.
Thank you, Honorable Magwala. That is duly noted. Can I just confirm, Amanda, if the quorum of this meeting is duly constituted?
Chair, there are 5 members on the platform, and since we won't be adopting anything, the meeting can consume.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Now that that has been said and done, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome specifically the Minister of the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, together with his team, Honorable Monji Gungubele. Today, we want to get a presentation from your good office in respect of the 2 bills before Parliament. I now invite you, Honorable Minister, to migrate to the microphone and address the Select Committee on Public Enterprises and Communications. Minister, the platform is yours. The Minister will also help us to introduce his team.
Chair.
Yes, Lebu.
Lebu Hanti can hear the PLO for public enterprises. Just to indicate that we actually have the Minister of Public Enterprises, Minister Gordon, together with his team, ready to give an update on the unbundling, the restructuring at Eskom. As per the program, I thought I should perhaps check if we are not on the same page.
There must have been a miscommunication there. I think I've been sent 2 packages, but it's fine. I see that the Secretariat have sent me something to do a correction with that. Honorable Minister Pravin God, I'm sorry for that small glitch. So we will invite Minister Godam to do the presentation in respect of that unbundling at Eskom. Minister, I invite you to present to the Select Committee on Public Enterprises and Communication. And once again, apologies for that glitch. Over to you, Minister. Is Minister on the platform?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Minister.
Okay. Good morning to you, members of the committee and other colleagues and members of the public or media that are part of this meeting. I really got a shock when you referred to the 2 bills. I was wondering what was going on, but thanks for giving us this opportunity. Just a brief background, and then I will ask Mr. Donald Nkarimeng from the department to take you through that presentation. He's accompanied by the acting DG. So this is the DPE presentation to yourselves as a committee. And by way of background, Chairperson, you will recall that at the beginning of 2019, the President set up a advisory team of about 6 or 7 persons who constituted by engineers, financial people, and individuals that are familiar with the developments globally on the energy front, and in particular, what was happening with public utilities like Eskom. That task team reported to the president and indicated that the modern trend is for utilities to be disaggregated, to no longer operate as vertically integrated entities by and large, meaning that generation, transmission, and distribution are all belonging to the same family, so to speak, or the same entity. And later in the year, the DPE was directed to develop a roadmap for Eskom, which leads it towards the restructured Eskom that we're going to talk about today. Targets were then set for the Eskom board and management in terms of various milestones, and in terms of the roadmap, the first task that the board and management of Eskom had at the time was to separate the transmission part of Eskom into a separate entity, 100% owned by the state, but falling broadly within the Eskom holding company. Of course, in March 2020, that process was interrupted by the COVID pandemic, and we're all familiar about or with the fact that that interruption delayed matters to an extent. The first milestone set was to undertake whatever processes were necessary in order to arrive at what was called functional separation of transmission by the end of 2021. Some of that was achieved, some of that is still to be achieved. And what is important to note here is that all of these processes are subject to licenses that are issued by NERSA. And for the record, there are 3 different licenses involved, and it's only over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that NERSA has finally issued all of the relevant licenses to Eskom for the transmission entity to begin to work. Now, the restructuring process, and you'll notice we're using the word restructuring as opposed to unbundling. Some of the commercial financial people reminded us that a company is normally unbundled into separate parts for the parts to be disposed of in one way or another. And in this case, we're not doing that. So we from now onwards be referring to the restructuring of Eskom. And that would mean that some 2,000 odd people within Eskom need to find their way within the transmission entity or the transmission company, as it's now called. Secondly, that there must be a separation of accounts. Thirdly, that there have to be an internal memorandum of incorporation. Fourthly, there has to be compliance with various provisions of the PFMA and the Companies Act as well. And fifth, Eskom on an annual basis is also required to publish a transmission development plan. And that transmission development plan, in terms of the latest numbers, involves the investment in 14,000 kilometers of new transmission lines, particularly to connect renewable plants that are now being built or have already been built in parts of the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, and Western Cape as well. So one will hear a lot in the public domain about the limitations placed on connecting these renewable investments to the main grid, so to speak. But this is obviously work in progress. So what we will be reporting to you today is what progress has been made by Eskom in terms of restructuring. From a departmental point of view, when we've reviewed the progress in recent times, we've brought to the attention of the board of Eskom that we believe that the timelines that the internal teams of Eskom are working on are far too elongated. They seem to lack urgency and the necessary drive to complete as many processes as possible during this administration. But equally importantly, Chair, you'd be aware of the Electricity Regulation Act Amendment Bill, which is also, I think, in Parliament, and which will, to a significant degree, also change the electricity industry in South Africa, where there will be greater participation, both by the state, but also particularly by the private sector, as is already happening on the generation side of the business. Secondly, it will create the equivalent of a buying office, and Mr. Nkadimeng will take you through some of that in a moment, which can purchase electricity from the cheapest possible source. And in that sense, Eskom will have to compete with other private players as well. Thirdly, there will be the systems operator, which we currently have, and which is world-class in terms of the skills and the capability that they actually have within the systems operator, so that they ensure that there's a balance between supply and demand. And the purpose of that is to ensure that the integrity and stability of the existing grid is sustained, notwithstanding whatever happens to a particular unit at a particular power station. And the purpose of load shedding is to create a balance between supply and demand. In other words, if the supply is dropping because the unit has failed somewhere, then demand is curtailed by utilizing one or other stage of load shedding itself. So that's the systems operator. So the transmission company of South Africa, as it is called, has as its primary purpose the development of an adequate grid, as we call it, to convey electricity from where it is generated to where it is needed. And there are all sorts of technicalities like wheeling charges, buying from the grid, but also supplying into the grid. And Mr. Nkadimeng will explain some of that as well in a moment. And like many other countries, that's the kind of capability that the transmission grid is required to actually have. The last component, which we've given consent for in terms of the PFMA, in terms of the creation of a separate company, is the distribution company. And in this regard, consent has been given for the separation of distribution into its own company, still within the overall umbrella of Eskom. And what is currently being worked on as far as the distribution entity is concerned is the business and financial case for distribution. And this is an area that requires careful attention because of the challenges that we have as a country in terms of municipal debt, in terms of the culture of payment, and in terms of illegal connections and other disruptive tendencies amongst the public, which all of us should be cooperating to eliminate, so that we have a sustainable entity as a whole, but also a sustainable distribution entity. Distribution also is the connection point, so to speak, between the transmission grid and the municipal grid, so to speak. And the role of municipalities in maintaining the electricity infrastructure within a municipality, but also refurbishing transformers and substations and renewing them where it is necessary after 20, 30 years of utilization, is as important as the restructuring process. And there again, as a country, we've fallen short because municipalities are not undertaking the kind of investments that are required in terms of sustaining, not only in a financial sense, but also in an engineering sense, the kind of infrastructure that municipalities have. Now, in the Constitution, in Schedule 5B, reticulation of electricity, meaning what we would call distribution of electricity within a municipality, is the power given constitutionally to local government. However, not all municipalities have the capability or the infrastructure that's required in order to play that role. And Eskom, particularly from the distribution side, has been entering into different types of partnerships, both for the purposes of ensuring that the appropriate revenue is collected from citizens and businesses, but also to ensure that any refurbishing that is required of the electricity infrastructure can in fact be undertaken by engineers from within Eskom itself. So there is, if you like, a hybrid situation that we have, where approximately 50% of businesses and households receive their electricity through municipal infrastructure and distribution, but the other 50%, plus minus, so under 50%, receives the electricity directly from Eskom itself. So there's going to be, over the next 10 years or so, very significant changes in the electricity industry in South Africa. And as all of the colleagues will know, that production of electricity contributes 41% of the total carbon emissions that South Africa has. And therefore, the management of the transition in terms of the fuel that is actually used, in terms of IRP 19, which is currently being updated into IRP 23, becomes quite critical in terms of its compatibility with the kind of commitment South Africa has made. Now, yesterday, the President addressed the United Nations General Assembly and repeated the commitment that South Africa has made in terms of its contribution to limiting the damage caused by climate change, but also the decarbonization processes within our own country. And part of that would be the contribution that the production of electricity makes to that overall objective that has been set by government at COP28, but repeated yesterday at the United Nations itself. So, Chair, we will take you through the broad outlines of where the restructuring of Eskom stands. There's a lot of detail that is still being worked on, and we would like to come back to you in the next few months, perhaps before the end of the year and before Parliament goes into the summer recess, and provide a further update to you and other committees in Parliament on where we stand on this very important project. So with those opening remarks, which were hopefully helpful, let me, with your consent, hand over to Mr. Nkarime, if that's okay with you. Thank you. Chair, are you there? Honorable members, can you hear us?
Apologies for that, members. The chairperson is experiencing network problems, but he is still on the platform.
So should we continue?
Yes, please continue, Honorable Minister.
Yes, Minister, please do continue. My network here is very much.
Okay, so I'm handing over to Mr. Nkarime, and Mr. Tekane will be helping him with the run of the presentation. Mr. Nkarime.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, honorable members, and good morning to everyone who's on the call. All protocol observed. I'm going to take you through the restructuring update. If you can go to slide number 2, just to look at the outline of the presentation. Level slide 2. The presentation, this is the outline of the
It's
presentation.
moving on my side, and I'm not sure why. I think I mean sorry, but it's moving on my side. Is it not moving on your side?
It moved. We are on the table of contents.
Okay. Is that in order?
All right. That's slide number 2. Honorable members, where it outlines what we're going to cover in the presentation, starting with what the roadmap was saying, the legal separation of transmission business, achievement and progress to date, the support required for restructuring the transmission, restructuring the distribution, progress to date, restructuring generation, progress to date, and right at the end, we look at what are the timelines that we are envisaging from the department. If you can go to slide number 3. The slide number 3, it's what the roadmap was envisaging, wherein you started with the structure, or how Eskom was looking like, and then you go into functional separation, where you're separating the 3 businesses, and then the legal separation, wherein you're going to have Eskom Holdings and the 3 subsidiaries being generation, transmission, and distribution. Next slide. This slide just provides the timelines that were envisaged on the roadmap. However, due to some dependencies, you will see that some of these timelines were not met. Hence, we have new timelines at the back, which we are looking at pushing to accelerate or expedite this process. Next slide. This slide just provides the current corporate structure, which the business is going to look like. Eskom Holdings with 3 subsidiaries. So you will see that the shareholder will have 100% ownership of Eskom Holding, which in turn will have 100% ownership of the subsidiaries being generation, transmission, and distribution. The next slide. Now, the roadmap envisages that when we start with the restructuring, transmission business was the first one to be separated. So we're going to report back in terms of what is the progress with regard to the transmission. The legal separation of transmission business into a subsidiary of Eskom Holding at the moment is at an advanced stage. Why am I saying that? In 2021 December, the National Transmission Company of South Africa was incorporated as a subsidiary of Eskom Holding. That is a milestone that was achieved in December 2021. Following that, they made an application to NERSA because the application that was applicable was the application from Eskom Holding. But now as a subsidiary, they need their own license, which is going to cover operations, trading, import and exports. Then subsequent to that, in July, NERSA approved only one license, which was talking to the operation of the transmission system. They did not approve the license for trading, import and export, but there were developments last week, which I will talk to that in the next slides, where NERSA have since approved those licenses. The next slide. So with the approval of the license, obviously we need to see the transmission company now assuming the role of the TSO. However, I must indicate that for that to happen, there is still what we call a requirement that must be fulfilled in terms of the lender's consent. Lenders have to give a consent that transmission company need to be separated. So that consent hasn't been approved or hasn't been received. Lenders are working on it. And the next thing that I must highlight, members, is that when the NTCSA was incorporated as a subsidiary, it assuming the role it was not going to assume the role of the transmission system operator yet. For that to happen, the ERA, which is in Parliament, have what we call transitional arrangements, which are going to afford the transmission company of South Africa to assume the role of the transmission system operator. At the moment, they have the license which they can operate the business of a transmission company, but not as the TSO until the ERA is finalized. But I'll talk to that in the next slide. So the next thing, the approval of the license, there was another requirement that because of the fact that in the past, transmission business was designated as the buyer of energy from independent power producers in terms of Section 34. With the incorporation of the transmission subsidiary, that right now has to be transferred to the National Transmission Company of South Africa. So that process, the Minister of DMRE has approved that and then sent that approval to NERSA for concurrence. So at the moment, Eskom is waiting for NERSA to concur on the designation of the National Transmission Company of South Africa as a designated buyer or from independent power producers. Another milestone that needs to be achieved, which is very critical, is the appointment of the National Transmission Company of South Africa Board of Directors. That is underway, is a process that is under consideration of the department. It's just following the governance process to approve that final recommended Board of Directors of the Transmission Company of South Africa. So the other point here, it just talks to the amendment of the ERA, which has been consulted and now is in Parliament, which is going to go, is awaiting the approval for it to be promulgated into law. See, the next slide, the one that you are at, it just talks to what is in place with regard to the transmission business. All these activities have been finalized. So what is key is that the promulgation of the ERA into law, the lenders' consent, the appointment of the board are critical activities which are missing at this stage. And then the process underway to fulfill those activities. If we can go to slide number 9. So I spoke about the lender's consent, which I said lenders need to provide their consent on the restructuring of transmission. The process is at advanced stage because engagement happened. Eskom has provided or furnished the lenders with the necessary documentation. So obviously the lenders have to go through their credit committees to approve and provide that lender's consent. So that process is unfolding. The timeline there, it depends on the lenders, but we are anticipating that by the end of the month, that could be finalized. So we will provide that further update when we receive it, when we provide the update, as the minister indicated, before the parliament goes to recess. The servitudes is another issue that had to be handled. Then again, it has moved with Eskom having agreed in terms of how servitudes are going to be handled. So these are some of the activities which were finalized. So the agreement between Eskom and TCSA, the subsidiary for operation on shared servitude, is in place. So all these activities which are critical for ensuring that now we transfer the operation into the national company, National Transmission Company of South Africa, have been completed. So what I've been talking about, it talks to the functional separation. However, the end point is the legal separation, where now the process of separating or restructuring the transmission is completed. So for it to be completed, these are some of the activities that are happening. Staff transfer, which is what is going to be required for staff now to be transferred into a subsidiary, which is the transmission subsidiary. There's an engagement that is happening, and then with that, there are necessary consultation that must happen with labor under what we call the restructuring and consultative forum. Eskom is engaging on that platform. The systems, the SEPs have been updated, and then there's a readiness for them now to migrate into this structure. And the workforce plan was approved with the recruitment of energy market function at an advanced stage. The next step. This slide just summarizes all these critical activities that needs to be completed for the legal separation of the transmission company as a subsidiary of Eskom Holding. The due diligence, which was completed right at the beginning. Then there is a need for a merger agreement between the company, Eskom, and the NTCSA. That is signed, and the implementation is anticipated at the end of December this year. And the existing MOI is being refined to include the amendments which were made to the NTCSA. All PFMA approvals were obtained in order to approve the transmission being separated from Eskom Holding as a subsidiary. There are two PFMA, one for establishment, and the other one is the transfer of assets and other things to the NTCA. So those PFMAs were approved by both ministers. And the service contract between Eskom Holding and the NTCSA is in place. So the next slide just summarizes what are the final steps which were completed in order to facilitate the legal separation of the transmission company. In terms of the energy markets, the consent of restructuring was obtained from the hydroelectric Basa as one of the service providers where Eskom is importing electricity. Future capacity contracting mechanism, the central purchasing agency was established, and there is an internal market that is operating based on Eskom rules. And then the South African Power Pool membership assignment supported the separation of the NTSA, and this again has been supported by the policy department, which is the MRE. And in terms of the strategy and communication, the NTCS strategy and operating model was signed off. The website is in place, and the branding architecture is in place. So that talks to all these activities that one have to complete in order to make sure that you don't leave any stone unturned when now you're moving the NTCSA into a subsidiary of Eskom Holding. So what are the key things that are outstanding? I mentioned the fact that the department is considering the appointment of the board. That process is going through the governance process. And once that board is appointed, they will undertake special resolution to effect the merger. And National Treasury must conclude what we call government support framework agreement, because the one that is in place currently was developed when transmission was a unit in Eskom, not as a subsidiary. So now is a subsidiary autonomous institution which is going to have its own board. So the government support framework agreement needs to be amended as such. The other one is the designation of the NTCSA as a designated buyer, which I mentioned that the Minister of DMRE has approved that and submitted that to NERSA for concurrent, just waiting for that to be concurred by NERSA. So the next slide, I think we just need to update that the lender's consent, it has moved. We were anticipating that by August 2023 it will be concluded. It was not the case, so we are anticipating probably by the end of September. And the completion of statutory third-party creditor notification by Eskom. Here the assumption is that there will be no objections. And Eskom to complete lodging of CIPC and the commencement, the transfer of people system by beginning of September. This was dependent on the approval of the remaining license by NERSA, and NERSA have since done that. So Eskom will be moving with this activity. So what we put there, the trading, which we assume by 2023 November, is again assumption that the lender's consent will be approved, will be available. The lenders will have approved that, so which will pave way, because now we have the license, we will be having the lender's consent, and the board will be approved. So we are envisaging that by November 1st, National Transmission Company of South Africa can go live and start trading. The next slide. This slide was just indicating the support that is required from different stakeholders in order to ensure that the timelines that we set, we are able to meet. So the first one was talking about the licenses, which we were clearly indicating that the first license for transmission was approved on the 27th of July, missing the other two licenses. And last week on the 15th, NERSA have approved the outstanding license for the transmission, National Transmission Company of South Africa. So all the licenses are there. So this activity is done. So designation of NTCSA as the buyer from IPPs in line with Section 34 determination, concurrence from NERSA. The MRE has submitted that to NERSA, so NERSA must just concur on that. And in terms of land and rights, the necessary amendments were done, where the right to access land, like the right that Eskom has said in Section 5 of the Electronic Communication Act, 86 of 2005, that is a process that is unfolding together with the Deeds Office in the Department of Public Works. So it's a process that is unfolding, is at advanced stage. There are no anticipated problems there. So as I explained, and in line with the roadmap, the first step was to restructure the transmission. So transmission, you will see that it's at an advanced stage compared to other subsidiaries, because once you have finished the transmission, there are activities which are dependent on the transmission separation for them to go through. So this slide now talks to the update in terms of now separating the distribution business in order to incorporate it as a subsidiary of Eskom Holding. So the financial separation, which was completed in March 21, it was followed by the appointment of the interim divisional boards, which is in place. The financial, which were ring-fenced to only reflect the distribution business. The due diligence for the separation was concluded, and the National Electricity Distribution Company of South Africa, which in short we call it NECTA, was registered with the Company and Intellectual Property Commission, CIPC, in October 2022. And all the PFMAs have been approved by both ministers, meaning the PFMA to establish distribution as a subsidiary of Eskom, and the second one, which is to transfer the assets and transfer everything into the distribution. That those two PFMAs were completed. So the next step. So here are the next steps that are required in the restructuring of the distribution. Following the approval of the second PFMA, which is the transfer of assets into a distribution subsidiary, there is a need for distribution subsidiary to apply for a license. Why must they apply for a license? Because the existing distribution license was under Eskom Holding when distribution was a business, was a unit. Now is a subsidiary, they will be applying for a distribution license from NERSA. And then subsequent to that, the process to engage with lenders will follow in order to get a consent from them to separate distribution and establish distribution as a subsidiary of Eskom Holding. And another thing, Minister highlighted the fact that there is a challenge in the distribution space, especially with regard to non-payment. National Treasury developed a program wherein there is a municipal area debt write-off, and that is subject to municipalities meeting the conditions imposed on them. So that is underway. Municipalities have to apply to National Treasury, and then one of the conditions is that they must keep their current accounts up to date for a period of 12 months, wherein 1/3 of the area debt will be written off. So that process just started. There are a number of municipalities that have applied. The update with regard to where is that process will be provided when we provide the next update of the restructuring. So there is a solution for municipal area debt, which is subject to municipality complying with the conditions that Minister of Finance imposed. So, like the transmission, there will be a need to appoint a board of the distribution subsidiary, which now Eskom will have to submit a list of a name recommending to Minister for consideration. That is the process that will follow. So once those processes are done, so there will be now the movement of the staff system and assets by management. So that's how far the distribution restructuring is continuing, which is the second business to follow after the transmission. Next slide. The generation. The generation will be the last one to be separated, but the separation of the generation and then the creation of a subsidiary is going to be different from the first two, which is transmission and distribution. At the beginning, I alluded to a slide that was showing the current corporate structure where you're going to have Eskom Holding, a new holding company will be established. That holding company will be having 100% ownership in the three subsidiaries being generation, transmission, and distribution. So now, as we're moving the subsidiaries transmission out of the existing Eskom holding, followed by the movement or the separation of the distribution company from Eskom holding, what was left is the generation unit. So that generation unit, it remains where the currently is Eskom holding. So automatically it becomes a generation subsidiary. There won't be a need for the two PFMAs to establish a new subsidiary and then to transfer assets. So generation will remain where it was Eskom holding, and in turn, the new holding company will have to be established. So the establishment of the new holding company will mean that there will be new holding company for Eskom, and then what used to be Eskom holding will be a generation subsidiary, and then it will complete the process now having new holding company with generation, transmission, and distribution. So the progress there with regard to that, with the distribution, there's a due diligence which was received from Eskom, where the department will be assessing it and responding to Eskom with regard to that. So the last one, the NewCo, which is going to be the new holding company that needs to be established in order to have to give effect to the corporate structure, which I alluded in the beginning of the presentation. At the moment where we are, Eskom has finalized a due diligence report, and that report will be submitted to the department to assess it and then advise in terms of how the new holding company will be established. The next slide. Honorable members, I must indicate that the timelines that are reflected, these are the timelines that the department is envisaging. We looked at Eskom timelines, and we thought that we can expedite some of the timelines. These were not the timelines that were provided by Eskom. Eskom provided their timelines, and we have since indicated to them that there is a need to review the timeline. So these timelines are subject to change. But we believe as a department that if we can expedite some of the activities, and an example was one of the outstanding activities, which was external activities, was the approval of the license by NERSA, which happened last week. So if we can get the lenders' consent at the end of this month, and then if the process of appointment of the board can be finalized, some of the activities can be pushed forward. We are aspiring to have the operationalization of the transmission company being at the end of August. So already we passed that timeline. We'll just have to review that, given the fact that although the license from NERSA was approved, at the moment, Eskom hasn't received that license. There are processes that still needs to be followed before the license can be issued to NTSA. So as a result, this timeline will move. The trading there, we are anticipating that by November, all outstanding activities will be finalized and it can begin trading by November. So now we will be looking at other subsidiaries, corporatization of the national distribution company that is achieved because the two PFMAs were approved, which now it paves the way for Eskom to apply for a license from NERSA and engage on it with lenders. So we anticipate March 24 for operationalization of the distribution subsidiary, and then the commencement of trade by April 24. And then we're anticipating that once we have gone through the due diligence and advised in terms of what mechanism is going to use to establish the new holding company, that process it can be finalized by March 24, and then it can start operating as a holding company by March 24. And then the operationalization of NewCo paves way for generation subsidiary now to start operating, because now it will be a fully fledged subsidiary of Eskom holding. That was the last slide. Honorable members, thank you very much for listening to the update on the structuring of Eskom Holding.
Chairperson.
Honorable Modisa, can you please assist me? My network is really, can you just help me to take the questions?
Okay, Chair.
Just for
I'll
the
do
ease
that.
of the flow of the meeting, please.
Okay. No, thank you very much, departments led by the Minister. Let me welcome your report. Now I give to the honorable members to ask questions. I'll see by raising of your hand. Honorable members, here is a presentation in front of you. Okay, I see a hand of Honorable Nana.
Yeah,
That's
thank you
the
very
only hand that I see for now. Honorable Nana, the platform is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to everyone. Chairperson, this meeting was supposed to start at 10 o'clock. It started 9 minutes after 10, precisely because the chairperson of the select committee had difficulties in connecting. And now he can't proceed to chair this meeting because of connectivity issues. I want to submit, Chairperson, that this is a clear testament that we cannot continue like this. Other select committees are now sitting physically in Parliament. I think we must do the same. Otherwise, we stand a risk of losing out on the stewardship and leadership of the chairperson and other members who might have a contribution to make, but because of connectivity issues, they just wouldn't. So I really want us to consider going back physically for our committee meetings. I wanted to check with the minister and the department. we will recall that indeed the president made an announcement during the State of the Nation address. I think it was last year, and subsequent to that, he also appointed the Minister of Electricity. Both the Minister of Electricity and the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, plus amongst other trade unions, NUMSA, were opposed to the president's announcement. So I would want to know from the minister as to how far has he gone in terms of engaging the various role players that I've just mentioned. How much of an impact does this have in his work and the work of the department in discharging a directive from the president? Secondly, Mr. Nkadimeng has mentioned that they're awaiting an approval from people that are owed money by Eskom. Now, what I want to check, we will be restructuring Eskom into 3 entities. But the debt that Eskom has is a debt that they took as one unitary Eskom before restructuring. How are you seeing the apportioning of that debt to these various entities? In other words, how do you see the debt that currently Eskom owes being allocated to various entities that would come as a result of Eskom's restructuring? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nana. I see a hand of Honorable Magwala.
Good morning, Chair. Chairperson, my network is a bit bad, man, for just arriving in Landoka, in a town now. Can you just allow me the next 5 minutes, then you can pass on to someone else? Then I will just indicate.
Let me see whether there are other hands. Oh, unfortunately, Honorable Magwala, I'll give to the department to respond because I don't see. Honorable Chair of the committee, do you have anything to say before I can give back to the minister and his team? Chairperson of the committee, do you have anything to say? No. Honorable Minister and your team, can you respond to the question that was asked by Honorable Nana?
Thank you, Chairperson. And thanks to Mr. Nana for his question. The decision to restructure Eskom is not the decision of a single minister. It's a decision made by Cabinet, which we are given responsibility as the DPE to implement together with the board. So, the question of other colleagues on Cabinet, I'm not sure exactly what Mr. Nana is referring to there, but as far as we are concerned, there's one government in South Africa, there's one cabinet in South Africa, and that cabinet has decided that we move in this direction. As far as the unions are concerned, there's various levels of engagement with the unions. For example, I was with the National Union of Mine Workers yesterday for about 4 hours at the workshop that they were having on the just energy transition, where once again there were different voices, but we will continue to interact with the unions on this matter. But as you also know, that the restructuring issue for some has become a political football. And we've got to ask the question, what is in the best interest of the country? And what is it that we are leaving behind for future generations? Having pointed out to you in my opening remarks that these sorts of restructuring processes take a long time to settle down if we look at international experience. The second level at which unions are engaged is within Eskom itself, and that happens through a consultative forum that Eskom has established. We, of course, don't attend that meeting, but we are aware that there are regular consultations in that particular regard as well. Thirdly, I think it's important to mention that there are not going to be any job losses as far as restructuring is concerned, and that what we have is, as we pointed out in the presentation, a separation of functions, but also the architecture of a new electricity system being put in place within South Africa itself. On the question of Eskom debt, this is one of many issues that at a technical level is being worked upon. And Mr. Nana is absolutely right that the debt was taken on at a, let's call it corporate level within Eskom. And as we go through this process, firstly, there have already been consultations with certain groups of lenders that impact upon different elements of the functions of Eskom. And there are further consultations that are still occurring between Eskom management and groups of lenders that will be impacted. But by and large, there's an understanding, particularly given the debt relief that was provided by government through the Treasury in assuming some of the Eskom debt, or rather bringing it on the balance sheet of the sovereign as a whole. And that has actually lightened the burden as far as Eskom debt is concerned. So one of the many processes that I outlined earlier on, i.e. moving of people, moving of accounts, creation of separate accounts, separate IT systems, and yet joined up in some kind of way, including the financial issues such as debt or capital raising, all part of the mix that is being worked through currently. And that is why I said at the outset that we are in the middle of those processes at the moment. And once we have absolute clarity, we'll be able to make some pronouncements in that regard as we go. So once again, Chairperson, thank you very much for this opportunity to give you an update on the restructuring process. And we'll avail ourselves over a period of time to give you further clarity. I see Mr. Nana's hand is up again, Chairperson. I leave it to you to manage that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, to answer the question that was asked by Honorable Nana. I think you responded very well. So, but let me give back to, again, I can see his hand again. Maybe he needs clarity. Maybe he's not satisfied about your answers.
I'm
Honorable,
also back, Chairperson. I'm also back.
Hello?
I said, Honorable Makwala, I'm also back stable.
Okay, no, yes. No, let me give Honorable Nana, and then I'll give you back again, Honorable Magwala. Honorable Nana?
Chair, it's not a follow-up. I'm happy to come after Honorable Magwala.
Okay. Thank you. Honorable Magwala?
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the session. Greetings to the department and honorable members and the staff and everyone that is in the meeting. I think, Chairperson, for me is to ask one or two questions in terms of this. I want to know, in terms of this division, that the cabinet, as the minister has said it, that it's not solely the minister that has done it, this thing. This thing was approved by the cabinet in terms of that. I'm very much interested in terms of the workers, but I see on the report it says no one is going to lose their job. But I also want to know in terms of transferring the assets of the workers in terms of their pensions and everything, it's still going to remain the same. The benefits are still going to be the same. And then secondly, are these entities that have been established in terms of these divisions of Eskom, are these divisions 100% owned by the government, or is there any private people that are going to be owning shares in this thing? Because we must safeguard the privatization of Eskom that we have been calling, that Eskom doesn't need to be privatized in terms of that. Those are the two questions that I wanted to ask from the minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Makwala. Honorable Nana.
Yeah, thanks once again, Chairperson. This matter, Chair, is unrelated to the topic at hand, but as the Minister will know, that sometimes we do take advantage of the executive's presence in our meetings to ask these questions anyway. Chair, an announcement has been made that there will be a holding company that will actually be overarching all our SOEs. And pundits and analysts have expressed different opinions. But in the main, analysts and economists seem to be positive. However, the common denominator in their comments is the composition of the board of the holding company. I would want to check with the Minister how much work has been done in this regard, and can you take South Africans into confidence that the appointment of members to this board will not be based on the card a particular person carries, but it will be based on being a South African and in possession of the required skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nana. For now, I don't see any hand. I'll give back to the Minister to answer.
Honorable Modise.
Oh yes, Honorable Chair of this committee.
I just want perhaps for the Minister to respond holistically to all the questions. These are the questions that I had prepared after listening to the presentation. Let me start off by appreciating the presentation led by the preface made by the Minister, as well as the senior official from the Department of Public Enterprises. I basically have the following questions. Minister, perhaps it would be good if you can once again, just as a point of emphasis, with the noises that are being made out there, that there is an intention by the state to actually sell Eskom, that perhaps you may use this opportunity to re-emphasize what you have said before, that Eskom will not be sold and Eskom will not be privatized. I think it is important because there's a lot of things that are being said in the public, including traditional media and social media. So my first question is, as Eskom is being separated into 3 divisions, what are the arrangements in respect of the workers of Eskom at Eskom's payroll? How will the restructuring of Eskom impact on the workers? Will they be transferred to the different divisions, or there will be retrenchment? It is important that we are upfront with those issues so that we give comfort both to the workers but also to the citizens of the country, that there are plans in place, including social plans, including severance packages if there will be retrenchments, and how those packages will be packaged in the best interest of the workers who have contributed their labor and time at Eskom, some of them for decades, some of them for scores of years. Question number 2, one of the challenges regarding the SOEs in the past had been the absence of an overarching legislation on SOEs. And it will be a big challenge for the restructuring at Eskom to enter that space without an overarching legislation on all SOEs. What is the status of that legislation, Honorable Minister? I know that this is a highly charged political question, but it is necessary that we do have a critical and a strategic way of looking at an overarching policy that is actually translated into legislation. Thank you. Those will be my questions, Honorable Minister. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairperson of the committee. Before I give to the minister, let me ask one question to the minister, which is very important. Honorable Minister, I just want to check with you. Once Eskom is restructured, will the department use the same method or criteria in appointing the board members and remunerations of executive directors? Because it seems as it's a good criteria or good method to use. Will the department use it? Thank you very much. Honorable Minister and your team.
Once again, thanks to the honorable members for the questions. Let me start with the Eskom specific questions and then I'll come to the more general ones. Mr. Magwala and the chair, Mr. Mkiva, raised important questions around workers. And I did respond to that earlier, but let me respond again, that there will be no detrimental effects as far as workers are concerned, and all of their benefits and rights will be retained. And we will make sure that this is not a process through which retrenchments are going to occur. Rather, if we actually look at the new setup, you're going to have, in time, more responsibilities on the shoulders of the transmission and the distribution team as we go forward. And equally, on the generation side, the state will have to make up its mind about not only being the recipient and buyer of electricity from privately owned renewable investments, but also become a renewables investor itself as the state. So both to Mr. Magwala and to Mr. Mkiva, there should be no concerns in this area of workers and their rights as far as we are concerned. Then I think both Mr. Magwala and Mr. Mkiva raise an important question where there's a lot of political mischief, as you correctly point out, largely to discredit either individuals or entities or government as a whole. Nowhere in any documentation is there any reference whatsoever to selling, inverted commas, Eskom. I mean, somebody's going to need a hell of a lot of money, if I may say so, to buy Eskom in the first place. But let me repeat for purposes of clarity. There is no intention to privatize. There is no intention to sell off Eskom. There is every intention, as we've indicated, in a constrained fiscal environment to crowd in investment in different areas of the energy system. But that does not mean that the 100% ownership of both the transmission and the distribution companies will be diluted in any kind of way. So let me give that assurance to all of the colleagues and to others that might be listening as well. Then, in relation to the overarching legislation, and this links to the point that Mr. Nana is making in relation to the new holding company that has been agreed to by Cabinet. And the idea here is that since about 2013, and the PECA Commission's recommendations, there has always been on the table the necessity to implement one of the key recommendations of that commission. I think it was called the Presidential Review Commission, and that is to have an overarching piece of legislation. And not only that, but to also have an overarching set of policies. And this connects to Honorable Modise's point about criteria for the board, criteria for remuneration, etc. So that we categorize the different SOEs and their complexity that they have to deal with, both at the board and management level. And then in accordance with that, remuneration and other standards, governance standards are actually set. So more directly, it is the intention of the state now, not only to take forward the recommendations of the PECA Commission, but also the recommendations more recently of the Presidential SOE Council, which spent about 2 years researching this question, looking at international examples that embrace this kind of approach. And again, like the whole electricity system, we are sowing seeds today that would benefit future generations when the fruit is actually born by those seeds and the plants that emerge from the seeds. And so this is the beginnings of perhaps a 5 to 10 year process which will consolidate what we are calling at the moment strategic SOEs. So it's not all SOEs. It's the strategic SOEs, whilst there will be any number of smaller SOEs at certain departments that would be housed in departments, but the strategic ones will be housed within the new holding company itself. So what we have had earlier in the week or late last week is a publication of the bill for public comment in the Government Gazette. So all of you can have a look at it there, and we will provide you with a briefing as well in due course. Secondly, many, as you say, Mr. Nana, there's been very positive responses in this respect from many. There will always be the skeptics, and that's understandable. And thirdly, both you and Honorable Modise make the point that what you want and the boards or the board of the holding company or the new state enterprise holding company are people who have an accomplished background in business, in finance, in governance, and have actual business experience. Because ultimately these are businesses that will have both a commercial purpose, but also a developmental purpose as well, as far as the strategic SOEs are concerned. And you will see that in the bill, the president is the major shareholder on behalf of government. But secondly, he would determine the composition of the board itself. So the overarching legislation that Mr. Mkiva talks about is now there in draft form, and it will be embellished with the appropriate policies that will ensure that going into the future, we actually have a consistent framework in every single respect. And here, honorable members, the Malaysian example is an interesting one, where they have literally booklets on issues of board appointments, on issues of remuneration, dividend policy, etc. And we have that, but it's slightly in a fragmented form. And in due course, we will consolidate all of that into a policy framework that will be utilized to guide each of the SOEs and the holding company itself. So in essence, the new holding company will embrace the strategic SOEs. Secondly, there will be a process through which there will be the preparation of those entities to enter into the holding company. You can't have shaky entities already within such a structure. And where appropriate, those entities have to, if they have to undergo any restructuring, will undergo the restructuring process prior to being given entry into the holdco. There is some feedback that we're receiving that Schedule A in the bill is empty at the moment, and that's deliberate because we don't want to yet anticipate which entities will go into holdco. The SOE Council will initially provide us with their assessment of what the president should include in such a holding company. And what we want over time is these entities must provide dividends to government. These entities and the holding company itself must act as a source of funds for the fiscus itself. But there is also the additional advantage that the dividends emerging from these entities could be the basis upon which a sovereign wealth fund is actually created, like many countries actually have from the various resources and the endowments that they have within their respective economies. So the view taken here is a far-reaching one. It's one that requires a sense of vision about where we want to take this country and how we want to overcome the disastrous past where SOEs were sites only of extraction and manipulation for corrupt purposes. We want now to set up a situation which have adequate controls so that there's no manipulation either by political figures or business people or whoever they might be to utilize public resources for the wrong purposes. So I hope I have addressed, Chair, all of the issues that have been raised. No privatization, no sale of Eskom, complete retention of all benefits by workers, and going into the future, a holding company with the strategic SOEs, and in 10 years' time, South Africans could be huge beneficiaries of this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for answering our questions.
Chairperson,
Honorable Nana?
sorry, sorry for not raising my hand.
Okay.
I just want to place it on record
Yes.
I have not expressed an opinion on whether I support the establishment of the new holding company or not. I'm afraid, listening to the minister, he kind of tied me and you that we appreciate or agree to the establishment. My question really was about the quality. Now that the decision has been taken, whether I stand opposed or support it, it's a debate for another day. Now that the decision has been taken and an announcement has been made, my question was the caliber and the process to appoint board members. I just want to place that on record, Chair. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Nana. Because I don't see any hand for now. What I can say, Honorable Minister, thank you very much with your team. But before I can release you, you can just give us a word of appreciation or anything that you wanted to say to our committee, because we are happy to be with you today. Political critiques or whatever you can say, or to show us, give us the time frame of how, when this Eskom will be finishing this restructuring.
No, thank you, Chair. As I said at the outset, thank you for this opportunity to give you some insights into the restructuring process. Some of the time frames take us towards the early part of next year, and some might even take longer than that. Secondly, what we are talking about are quite significant structural changes to the electricity system, and that it is a combination of what happens within Eskom, but also what happens outside of Eskom in terms of the ERA amendment bill. And as I also pointed out, both of those processes that have taken other countries a long time to bed down, but we are trying to work with the Eskom team to ensure that there is appropriate level of urgency on the one hand and attention to detail on the other hand, to ensure that the processes have the least possible disruptions that can be anticipated in such big changes. The second point is obviously that we need to inspire confidence in our institutions and in our processes as well, particularly from the financial markets, because many of our entities borrow from those markets. And we hope that all of you share in that responsibility to create the right level of confidence, provide the entities to also deliver their share of the bargain. And lastly, that the President's announcements in relation to the holding company are absolutely visionary in a sense. They borrow from the best examples in the world, like Temasek in Singapore, but it took Temasek 25 to 30 years to reach the stage it is at today. And I know I'm not going to be around in 20 years, but for the younger generation, we might well have created the foundations for an important institution that could take the country in a different direction. So once again, thank you for this opportunity, and we'll revert to you when new developments are present that we need to brief you on. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Minister. Let me check with the Honorable Chairperson of the committee whether he has anything to say before you leave, Honorable Minister. Honorable Kiva?
No, thank you very much, Memodisa, for holding the fort here. We were really struggling. It's related to load shedding, but I think I'm fine now. Minister, thank you very much for this input, and thank you very much for the assurance about the concerns that the citizens have. And I think this presentation today will go down in history as one of the most important interventions that are required, because I think what is more important in terms of the national agenda is for Eskom not to collapse. And this particular intervention is being made to ensure that Eskom is restored, is protected, and actually promoted to gain its former glory as a national asset to this country. And having said that, Minister, I would like just to, because we hardly get a chance to convene meeting every time there are issues that are being raised. I have received in the course of last week a communication, and this by no means I'm asking you to respond to it now. Perhaps it could be something that you can share with us in writing. You know, when the Dinel recently came to present to us here, and then we were told that for the first time, they have actually made profit of about 390 million. Now there's a critical question now that is simmering, which says that there was a grant of 1.2 million, which I think was the last tranche which was being given to Dinel as part and parcel of the rescue of Dinel. Now, some people are suggesting that that 390 which is being mentioned actually is the remainder of the unspent resources from the grant which was actually injected into the account of Dinel. Now, would it then be true that in actual fact that they have actually made profit, or it is on the basis of an ordinary accounting measure to say that if they were given a grant of 1.2, they also count that in as income, and therefore, if 390 is still unspent, then that means it is counted as profit. That's number one. Then number two, there is also a suggestion that Dinel may be taken to business rescue. And the reason why I am asking this question now when we meet, because it may take longer for us to have another meeting. And therefore, it is important that we are seized with the matters and we deal with them head on long before things come to a halt. Now, my question, is it true that there are plans to actually take Dinel to business rescue at the back of what we have just heard, that actually they have declared a profit for this time in this financial year after a long period of time? So I think because Minister, you were not prepared for this question, and I wouldn't like to be unfair to you, but I think it's important that we raise it so that you take it as a take-home, and maybe you can just share with us, even in writing, just an explanation note on how those two questions come into the fore and how we should deal with them when they come to our table.
Can I respond to?
No, you would like to respond to them. Okay, Minister, by all means.
So, we take out any doubt. Dinel is not heading for business rescue, full stop. And whoever is saying that and promoting that, again, has some mischief in mind. So I don't know where that comes from. That has never been part of any discussion at all. On the first question, it is true that an amount of money that was set aside to enable, from the Treasury, to enable Dinel to pay off debts, to pay off arrears salaries. Not all of the debts have been paid off, as I understand it, at the moment. But Dinel is slowly beginning to produce things that it can sell. And that is what our focus is on currently. We've met with the board, we've met with the management team as recently as a fortnight ago, and made it very clear that what we need now is for production to increase, for sales to increase, so that the NEL can bring in its own revenue and meet its own requirements as well, and enter into whatever partnerships are necessary. But there is no possibility at all and no need for business rescue at this point. So thank you very much for raising that. We'll try to find out a little bit more detail about what money was spent on what issues and revert to you on that. Thank you very much.
No, Minister, thank you very much for your openness on this matter and the preparedness to provide even more, meat into the bone. But I think it gives us comfort. It gives us comfort that you are saying that it won't be taken to business rescue, and then you will provide the details in relation to the expenditure. Minister, thank you so much, and we're looking forward to engaging with you again in the near future. And whenever we have issues, because of the critical nature of the SOEs in the development trajectory of our country and the role that they play in the developmental state. So your department is actually in the core phase of things that are related to infrastructure development and development in general of the country. So whenever we reach out to you, please, by all possible means, make yourself available, and if not, maybe your deputy available, because of the importance of the role of your departments in the national agenda. Thank you so much, Minister. We will now release you together with your team, and I ask the members to remain in the platform because we have just one more item to attend to. Thank you, Minister. Yeah, you are released. Memo Dise. Yes, we actually the reason why I requested that we remain in the platform, we are not going to be attending to the minutes in this meeting because this meeting was more dedicated to this issue of the unbundling of Eskom. But the reason why I said let's remain on the platform, I would like us just to get a briefing in relation to the international study tour. Many of our members have been asking me as to what is the status of this, because they would like to plan their lives. So people don't want to be ambushed and be told just a week or two before we travel. So it is important that there's clarity on this matter. Actually, members deserve to plan 2 months ahead of time in relation to this. And I know that there must have been some glitches on the side of administration, because I believe that also myself sitting as the chair, because this is a joint study tour of my committee and your committee.
Recording stopped.
And therefore, I don't know why they are stopping the recording, because it is part of this meeting. This is a very critical item.
Recording in progress.
Because we don't want a recurrence of what has happened in respect of this, not to us, not to future members of the committee who will be part of the 7th administration. So it's important that there's clarity, because we have had difficulties to plan our diaries and lives around this. Other members want to get permission from their constituencies, and they also want to talk to their PCOs so that they leave systems in place and arrangements that are being put, so that whilst they are away, they are able to deal with matters. Maybe I would like to give it to you then, Honorable Modise, to just update us as to where are things in respect of this study tour.
No, thank you very much, the chairperson, and let me greet also the members. What I know is that everything from our side, from the content advisors, they have done their task, their part, and then they sent the application to their managers. At the just, I was told Amanda is busy getting the quotation because the international relations is no longer helping the committees with the accommodation and the transport and all the quotations. Now the committees have to do their own quotations from their side. So in last week, again, I received the letter from the person who was saying, look, Honorable Mudise, you must restrict, because it's an international tour. If it happened that this tour are being approved, you must reduce your members of your committee. Then I said, no, I will wait, and then we will discuss with the whips of all the, for example, the whip, all the members of our committees to check how are we handling this matter, and then we will take it back to the whips and yourself. How, and then we take back to the committee members to see how are we going to reduce members, because according to them, it seems the costs are too expensive. So maybe because Amanda is in the platform, she can share with us how far with the quotations, because I was told she's the one who's dealing with the quotations.
Thank you, Honorable Mudise. Honorable Mudise is correct to say that management requested quotations when me and ASCA submitted the political application, and international relations no longer does quotations for us. So I then requested on the 1st of September, I requested quotations from the travel agent, which is Travel with Fair, and I've been asking them every day about the progress. And I think during this meeting, they just informed me that they've received all the quotations, but they had not received the one for ground transport, hence the delay. They've only received one for, what is this, for flights and accommodation, and we're struggling to get quotations for ground transport, hence the delay. So during this meeting, I received an email saying that they have received one for ground transport. So hopefully I will receive the quotes for everything today. Once we receive the quotes, we will submit the application to the manager to sign, and then to both chairpersons, and then forward it to the other people that need to ask to sign. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's this is the update, Honorable Chair and members. We are waiting. Just I think by tomorrow, me and you will be receiving those applications. Then we'll be signing them and sent to the House Chair and the Chief Whip.
Okay.
And then the other thing is because when we realized, Honorable Chair, that we are supposed to go next week, that week while we are on the recess, but we realized that it's not possible. Then we shifted to somewhere month end of October. But when the application comes, you'll see it's somewhere the 28th or something. Yeah, it's overlapping to November. But we will see the date when it comes.
The 24th October to the 2nd of November. Sorry, Chair.
Yes. That's
No, I think let's agree, honorable members, that once things are finalized in respect of the logistics, and the quotations, and then we know that there is clarity of how many members that are going. Then Memo said we would have to communicate to members how the delegation is going to be constituted, so that we are all on par in terms of everything that is related to the trip. I think it's better that we put everything above board so that we don't have issues and comebacks. But I think also we need to say before the end of this week, this matter needs to be resolved, and there should be a clear program of action and confirmation in respect of everything that is related to this trip. Because we are basically under a month and 2 weeks from the trip happening. Is that okay, Honorable Metisa? If we agree that if we can maybe talk on Tuesday latest next week to give a clear way forward.
Definitely sure. Next week in our meeting we'll also discuss it. But like I said, she will give us an update by tomorrow. Let's make sure that when these come to us, we sign it and send it back to the relevant House Chair and Chief Whip.
Okay.
So that we must not waste our time like they did on that side, waiting for the quotation and so on and so on.
All right.
Sure, Chair.
Members, I think then members, I hope that we have addressed this matter in the best interest of all the members in terms of the information and the knowledge related to this. I don't think you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have my hand up, and also Magwala had his hand up.
Okay. No, it's fine. I can give you time now to ask a question, Honorable Nana.
No, Gordon, to me, it's not a question, rather a comment. I appreciate, and I like the fact that you've used the word overboard, because as members of the committee, we require some sense of knowing where we are going, and if for some reason presiding officers and management have decided to reduce the size of our delegation, let us be told. I mean, there's nothing you guys can do. It's out of your hands. Let us be told so that we can plan our lives accordingly. And usually, we all know how a delegation of parliament is composed. The governing party will be in the majority, and the rest of us as in the opposition will then have to share amongst ourselves whatever is left. And look, we cannot contest it. It has been a practice, but I'm just saying I appreciate the fact that you will be transparent about it, and the sooner we get told, the better. And I'm pleased that you have both, as chairpersons, agreed on Tuesday next week that at least we'll have finality of the matter. We'll know how the composition of the delegation is looking like, so that people can start, doing whatever is necessarily possible for them to either go or remain in the country. So yeah, thanks a lot, Chair. Magwala's hand was up as well.
Stay put in your country of your origin, your beloved land.
No, I don't mind.
No, thank you, Honorable Nana, but please don't help me to chair this meeting by identifying hands here. Honorable Magwala?
Chairperson, I wanted to correct you and plead with you to please lead the meeting properly, because this hand has been up before, Honorable Nana. I don't know if this thing of device is beating you, because you brought us to this thing of Zoom. Now they are beating you, and then you want to complain about chairing a meeting. Anyway, Honorable Mutise Landoka have answered my question. I wanted to know the possible dates in terms of the duration, in terms of that. But please, next time, always, even on the apologies, I had to speak. You were not recognizing my name. I don't know, is it small or is it too black?
No, thank you, Honorable Magwala. I've got nothing against you. Absolutely. I think it's just an issue of technology. I am quite more literate than you in terms of technology. It's just that it's the load shedding issues. Well, members, I think we now have come to the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you very much for your meaningful contributions. And we shall communicate in good time if we meet on Tuesday or on Wednesday, any day wherein we agree. And we'll also have a briefing on this last matter. Thank you very much, members. The meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Modula.
Thank you, Memodise. Thank you for holding the fort.
Thanks.
You are a woman to be trusted.
I hope it doesn't have anything.
Well, glad that you have identified the woman to be trusted in this group.
Hey, Honorable Maromela. Congratulations are in order in all the developments.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Great.
Aye, Mama Mdisi. Ubala WhatsApp yakhe Mdisi.
Sharp.